Hi, everyone, and welcome to Miami Film Festival Gems. I'm Lauren Cohen, the Director of Programming, and I am so excited to welcome you to this very special variety event with Ethan Hawke. Who's excited to see Ethan Hawke? Woo! I know it sounds like I'm just saying this, but I swear I'm not. I've worked here for 12 years, and for the entire time I've worked here, my dream has been to bring Ethan Hawke to this festival. Every year since I've had this job, I've invited him to the festival, no matter what. Every single year, I will find an anniversary of one of his films, one of his new releases. I was like, I need to bring Ethan Hawke to this festival, and so the fact that it's happening right now feels actually insane. I would like to say some quick thank yous. I want to thank Miami-Dade College. It's so nice to be here at Wolfson Auditorium, and I want to say the biggest thank you to Variety for their partnership and for making tonight happen. This really is a dream come true for us. Before we get started, I would like to introduce tonight's moderator, so please join me in welcoming Variety co-editor-in-chief, Ramin Setoodeh. Thank you again, Ramin, for everything. Your guys' partnership means so much to us. But tonight is all about the man of the hour, Ethan Hawke. I have a quick, funny story to tell you guys. So as I mentioned, I have been inviting Ethan for everything every year since I've worked here. And a couple of years ago, they announced the movie Glass Onion. And it was the second Knives Out movie, and I was looking through the IMDb cast list, and it was before the movie had even premiered, and Ethan Hawke's name was there. So I was like, okay, I'll send Netflix an invitation to Ethan Hawke for Glass Onion. And then I saw the movie a month later, and he has a 30-second cameo in the movie. And I was like, okay, well, that's why Netflix did it right back to me. But I stand by it because even 30 seconds of Ethan Hawke makes a movie so much better. So you can only imagine what a movie with an hour and 40 minutes of Ethan Hawke is like, which is what you get in Blue Moon. Has anyone seen Blue Moon yet? Woo! He is absolutely incredible in it. Not only is he in every scene of the movie, he's in every shot of the movie. So that's why it's one of my absolute favorite movies of the year, because we get maximum amounts of Ethan Hawke, which is incredible, and he is so incredible in it. I mean, not only does he express this extreme melancholy and desperation of Loren's heart, but he also brings this humor and personality to it that is really, truly unmatched. He deserves all the awards and more, and I truly, truly hope he gets a Best Actor nomination because he more than deserves it. He's so incredible. And you know him from so many other movies, like the Before trilogy, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight, Training Day, Boyhood, Great Expectations, Tape, Reality Bites, Gattaca, Dead Poet Society, so much more. He has so many projects right now. He has Blue Moon out. He has The Lowdown, which is about to have its season finale. And he has Black Phone 2. So he is the hardest worker in Hollywood. And not only is he one of the best actors out there, but he is the best to listen to speak about cinema. No one is more insightful and cares more about the art form. So we are so honored to have him here tonight. But I've been talking a lot. You guys want to see Ethan Hawke. So on behalf of Miami Film Festival and Variety, I am so proud to present Ethan Hawke with our Variety Virtuoso Award.
Oh, wow, thank you so much. You don't have to do that. After that amazing introduction, I'm dead positive I'm going to be extremely boring tonight. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so honored to accept this. I've never been to Miami before, so this is my, let the party begin. I love festivals like this because they are the life's blood of the film industry. It's often called an industry, and it gets treated like a commercial business, but it's not. It's representative of our collective consciousness, and you guys keep it alive. Places like this keep it alive. Thanks to the Miami-Dade College for making this happen. Thanks to Variety. Thank you very much. And of course, to the Miami Film Festival. This is awesome. I'll carry it. I'm going to put it right here.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
This is going to be fun, I think.
This is going to be fun. We're going to get the party
time
started. So I had a lot to say, but Lauren's introduction was
Yeah.
so good.
She
that
crushed it,
I don't
you know?
really have anything to add to that other than congratulations on receiving the Variety Virtuoso Award.
Well, I'm a virtuoso. That's, I'll tell my kids to take it to me every morning. Just welcome me. Wake up, Dad, you're a virtuoso.
It'll be waiting for you at the breakfast table.
Yeah, or hopefully at the pearly gates at the end. They'll be like, hey, let me in.
So Ethan and I are going to have a really great conversation, and then we're going to open this up to questions from the audience. So if you have a good question you want to ask Ethan, think about that as we're having a conversation. We're going to open it up, and you guys are all going to have a chance to talk, or some of you are going to have a chance to talk and ask Ethan a question. But I wanted to start, I was going through all of your credits, and we saw that incredible clip reel of some of your great performances. And I noticed that on IMDb, you now have exactly 100 credits. So we're not going to go through all of your credits, but I wanted to start with, what was it in the DNA of acting where it first spoke to you? I wanted to start there. When did you first know that this was something that you were intellectually curious in doing and performance was something that was in your soul?
Well, a lot of kids love to perform, and I started working when I was a child. I did my first movie when I was 14 years old, and I did love it, but I don't think I knew what I was thinking about. I don't know what I loved about it, what drew me to it. It was something, a part of me that I didn't understand. I would venture to say that the first time I really felt what acting could be, well, there are two things that popped to mind. One is doing my first play, which was before the first movie, and it was George Bernard Shaw's St. Joan, and I played a page, and my line was, "Look, a kingfisher." That was it. I still remember it. That was all I said. But I got to watch all these adults sit around in a room in a basement of what felt like a cathedral. It was the McCarter Theater in Princeton, New Jersey, and we were rehearsing in the basement. And if anybody knows that theater, it's a very beautiful old building. And my parents hated going to work. You know, life was something that happened on the weekends or after 8. It wasn't something that happened at work. Work was just arduous. And there were these adults in the room, and they were sitting there talking about George Bernard Shaw and whether they believed in God and what was a saint and what wasn't a saint and what was the power of imagination. And they got to dress up as like knights and things like that. That was very cool. And they were having these deep conversations with swords and everything. And I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. This is fun. But that was just the first touch with it. And then on Dead Poets Society, doing scenes with Robin Williams, and even the other young actors. Peter Weir was a great filmmaker. I've met only a handful of people that I would say that were a master craftsman, and the way that he built rehearsal, the way he built a set, it felt not, I don't usually like this word important, because it's like, well, remind me, I'll tell you my favorite Richard Linklater story about that word, but it felt significant. It felt of substance. It felt of value. And once you work on something like that, I feel like, you know, Peter was the captain of that ship. Robin was the first mate. I was just a crew hand on it. But I got to see what it felt like to set sail and what excellence can look like. And you don't unsee that.
And you weren't sure. Yeah, you can clap for that. You can definitely clap for that. You weren't sure if you wanted to pursue acting at that time. And Dead Poets Society became one of the biggest movies of the year. It made $235 million, which back then, in 1989 dollars, that's like $500 million.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it was a huge hit. It received Oscar nominations, and it really catapulted your career. But what do you remember from receiving the call from Peter Weir saying you were going to be part of that cast? Do you remember your participation and how you were swept up in
First of all, it's confused a little bit, because about 10 years later, he showed me my screen test, which was so bad. I couldn't believe, I had this incredibly long hair, and I was, you know, for you kids, I was smoking during my audition.
In character, or just because you thought
No, I had a cigarette in my mouth. And I was like, are you kidding? What was I doing? And he was like, no, you're great. I'm like, you can't even see me. My hair is hanging in front of my face. But he was really amazing. One of the things he did which was I had really wanted, for those that know the movie, Robert Sean Leonard plays this young man who takes his own life in the movie. But his character is really, really outgoing and vivacious and loves life. And I really wanted that part. And Peter really wanted me to audition for the shy, withholding character. And he said this amazing thing. And Bobby wanted to play the part that Peter wanted me to. He was auditioning for the shy kid. He is really shy. And Peter had this expression. He said, you have to cast for the final color. And he said, if I watch someone who's inherently an introvert act like an extrovert, when it comes time to expose his self-loathing and his discomfort, you will believe it because you didn't believe the extroverted personality. You felt something was wrong there. And when it comes time for you to stand up at the desk at the end, I'm going to believe it because I know it's in you. And it's cast for the final color. I've never forgotten that. But when I was just so happy I got to drop out of college and everything when I got to college. That's what I was. And what was funny.
But stay in school if you currently are in college.
Yeah, definitely. But the thing that was so moving about it to me was that because I'd done this movie Explorers that was supposed to be a big hit when I was 14, I was 15, I think, when it came out, and I was devastated by the movie's failure and really felt that it was my fault and felt like I wasn't going to be able to be an actor. And I felt I was 15 years old and I'd already failed, you know? And so I never took, even when people would tell me the film was a success, I just didn't believe it. Because I was so guarded from the experience with the Explorers. But that did me a lot of good to be that guarded and to be mistrustful of how success is defined.
You were 14 when you did Explorers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I read something or I saw a video where you talked about even at the premiere of the movie, you were at the Ziegfeld Theater using the bathroom and people were coming into the bathroom and saying how awful they thought the film was and how you weren't a star.
Yeah. We had grown up a lot from the time the movie came out before it shot. So we were in suits and stuff. We didn't look like River Phoenix and I were at the urinal, you know, listen, and the one guy's, that movie sucked. Yeah, God, what a bore. And River and I were like, what? You know, because everybody was telling us it was great. And that was our first wake-up call. Welcome to Hollywood, kids.
And then from Dead Poets Society, I think the very first Ethan Hawke movie I saw was with my sister. It was White Fang, based on Jack London's book. And at the time, I think there was an interview where you said that was the best acting experience of your life. Can you talk a little bit about what it was about White Fang that made you realize you could really love this profession?
Yeah, if I was to, and I actually hope I get to do this someday, if I was to be able to teach a class on acting, one of the things I would love to do is bring some animals in. Because I was 18 and I flew out to Alaska. It was like January 16th. The sun came up at 10:30, went down at 2:30. And in those 4 hours, I was supposed to walk with these wolves and because for the wolves to do the scenes with me, they had to be comfortable in my presence and everything. And the amazing thing about animals is if you are actually present with them, they will be present with you. But if you're acting, they start wondering where the camera is. You know, they start they read your nonverbal energy so clearly. And we do it too, we just are better at pretending we don't, you know? And so when you can actually have a sincere, real moment with the animal, you're really having a moment. And that was great teaching for me for my future relationship with Richard Linklater, he has a kind of allergy to plot. He like whenever he feels the plot working, you know, like if you think about the Before trilogy or Boyhood or Dazed and Confused or any of the movies of his, they rest on something other than plot. And so if you start acting, I remember my first day with him, I was doing a scene and I was full of all this. I'd been reading Stanislavski and this book, Elia Kazan book, and I was full of like what my character's secret was and what I had in my pockets and what I was really thinking. And we'd do this monologue, and Rick was, after it was over, he's like, "Wow, that was really good. It looked like you were like moved when you said that line." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "That was weird. Why were you moved?" He's like, "I'm like, well, it's kind of like my secret." He's like, "Oh yeah, you were acting." And I was like, yeah. He goes, yeah, stop doing that. He's like, because see, if you start acting, the audience is going to want a plot. And we don't have a plot. So you just got to be. Because if you just are with somebody, an hour and a half passes really quickly. But if they're acting, it's a bore. I mean, you need a story. And so it started to be this kind of, in all the future movies I did with him was all about kind of erasing the line between character and performer, and to really be in the presence of the camera and the other actor, often like the way Jed was on White Fang.
And how did you and Richard Linklater first meet? Because the two of you now have worked together on 9 movies, which is really, really staggering, starting with Before Sunrise, leading all the way up to Blue Moon, which many in the audience have seen or are going to go and see. And so how did the two of your... Please do. It's really... I agree completely with Lauren. It's one of the best movies of the year. You guys really should see it if you haven't seen Blue Moon. But how did the two of you first start to work together? And did you know... Was it instant? Did you know that this is someone that's going to profoundly change my life and my work?
All right. Well, I had seen Slacker, and I knew that was like the first movie that I saw that somebody of my generation made. It was like, oh, that's us. And some, like, because I had looked at directors like Peter Weir, I looked at them as mentors, and it was like, oh, somebody like me made a movie. And I loved it. And I was starting a theater company, and one of the young men in the theater company, his name's Anthony Rapp, he was in Dazed and Confused. And he invited me to a rough cut, a test screening before it came out of Dazed and Confused. And so if you guys know him, the actor Steve Zahn came with me, and he's so funny and so cool. He brought a 6-pack with him, and it was so fun. And we sat and watched this movie, and I felt an injustice in the universe that I was not in this movie. It felt like the way you feel about, like when you read the news about terrible things happening in the world. It just felt like this is wrong. And then Anthony said, you know, he's coming to see our show on Tuesday. I was like, oh, cool, all right. And so afterwards we went out and we started talking, and we talked, and we ended up talking. It sounds kind of romantic. We got home at like 4:30. He walked me to my door, and we didn't kiss, but he did send me a script a couple of days. He was talking to me about this idea he had for a movie called Before Sunrise, and he sent me the script of it, and it was very different than the finished film. I mean, it was a train ride from San Antonio to Philly. I mean, it was very different.
Oh, it wasn't set in Europe initially?
No,
okay.
No. In his mind, that train ride could be anywhere, you know. And so I thought he was offering me the movie. But so I called him up because he put his number on. I called him, hey, this is really great. And he said, yeah, so we're having auditions next week. You want to come in and audition? I was like, you know, and I thought, all right, I'm going to have some humility, and I'm going to go get that part. And I did. But I will tell you this. We had answering machines back then. And when his message was on the answering machine was the first time, and I don't know if you guys have had that weird intuition feeling. When I heard the message, I was, you know, he'd press play and I would go like empty the fridge or do something while the messages are playing. And I thought it was somebody's voice that I'd known forever. I thought it was an old friend. And I was like, but I couldn't place the friend. And then I went back and rewound. I was like, oh, that's that guy I met the other night. But I remember the moment of feeling like, it's like somewhere in my body I knew I was going to know this person a really long time.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
And when you were auditioning, that's when you met Julie Delpy? Because they had Celine's come in and you were reading with different Celine's.
And I never felt more stupid in my life.
Why is that?
Because she was so intense. I mean, she is so intense, but she was that intense at 21 or 22. She had worked with Godard. She'd worked with Kieslowski. She'd worked with Volker Schlondorf. And Linklater has this incredible wealth of knowledge about cinema, and they would just geek out talking about Tarkovsky or something. And I would be like, have you guys seen Raiders? And she would be like, oh my God, why don't you go have a Big Mac? You know? And I was like, it never occurred to me that you wouldn't hold Raiders on the highest bar. I didn't, and I learned so much from the two of them.
How much of that movie was improvised?
Well, that's the mystery of Linklater. None of that movie is improvised, but we spent 4 weeks in a room like twice the size of these 2 chairs or something, and Rick just invited Julie and I to write the movie, and we would just sit there, and there'd be a scene where I'm supposed to talk her into getting off a train, and she would say, "I would never get off the train with him." And Rick would say, "All right, but then we wouldn't have a movie." I mean, but I would not get off the train with him. Well, what could he say? They would nothing. And so I would be like, I got an idea. Let me pitch this at you. And she'd go, no. And for like 2 weeks, I'd try to come up with ideas that would talk her into getting off the train. And then I came up with this idea that I was telling her that I was a time traveler, and that if she gets off the train with me, if she doesn't get off the train, she's going to spend the rest of her life wondering what would have happened if she had. And if she does, she'll be so much happier knowing that I'm as boring and stupid as all the other men in her life. But at least she won't have to wonder. And she kind of liked that, and she improved the dialogue a little bit. So we kind of built the scene based on things that, to give you an idea, when we started shooting, there was like a scene about 3/4 of the way through the movie that simply said, Jesse and Celine go into a cafe and proceed to have the best scene in the film. That's Rick's idea of a script, you know. No, and Julie would go, "What are we going to do?" I don't know. It's going to be great, though. It's got to be great. And we would meet on Saturdays and Sundays and try to come up with something awesome. And eventually, we finally did. I thought.
You can clap for that. You can. Before Sunrise went to Sundance, this was in the mid-'90s. This was at the peak of Sundance. This was at the peak of the indie film movement. A real generation of artists were emerging, and they were deciding that they didn't want to go through the studio system. They wanted to tell movies their own way, and they changed Hollywood. What was it like being part of that? And sort of, do you have memories of going to Sundance during that time, or being with Tarantino or all the different directors that were on the ground there?
I do, but what's funny about it now is that in the moment that we were there, we were wishing it was 1972. You know, we weren't aware that anything special was happening. I mean, we were disappointed in the culture that we were inhabiting, but if you went out to dinner with Linklater and Quentin, for example, all they would do is talk about Scorsese and Sidney Lumet, and they'd talk about, oh man, if only I could be making a movie in '68, then it would be amazing. And so I do think hindsight is so powerful that you can see those moments for what they became. But we weren't aware that anything special was happening. We were disappointed it wasn't. And it was only in the years afterwards and the impact that those people made and the ways that the industry changed that you started saying, oh, you know what, it changed there, that night. So I loved it, and I have great memories of it. But I say that to young people now to go like, they said, yeah, I know we're not allowed to mention him, but whatever, Woody Allen, he has this great movie, Midnight in Paris, which is all about everybody keeps wishing they were 10 years before them, you know? And I think it's really true that it's very difficult for us to live in the moment and accept the moment on its own terms and to see what's valuable about the moment.
And that's what it was like being that's a very interesting way. I don't think I've ever heard the glory years of Sundance being described that way, but it didn't feel like you were living the glory years as you were living them.
I had a lot of fun. And I'm glad there are no pictures. But we were aware. I mean, here's the thing that makes Linklater so special is his humility. He's not humble. It's not artifice. He understands that we're in service of an art form, and the art form is going to continue on. He was saying this to me when I was 24. You know, when we were working on Before Sunrise, we would come up with certain lines, and he'd be like, no pop culture references. He's like, I don't want no jokes about music, no jokes about movies, no jokes about politics, no jokes. He's like, I want people to be able to see this movie in 50 years and we've got to hunt for what is timeless about right now. And he was very aware that the form was going to continue on after us, and that we are small players. I remember now I'll get to the important Linklater story. It was one of my favorite. I was doing an interview. It was like somebody from Time magazine, right before Midnight was coming out. And this critic said, "This is the most significant romantic film of a generation." And Rick went, "Oh, wow, that's a low bar." It's just kind of the way he thinks. What else is even any good at all? I mean, that sounds arrogant, but it's just. And I remember
when you hear him telling it in his Texas voice, it is very funny.
It's funny. That's a low bar. But we were taking a meeting once, trying to get a movie made that we never got made. We're at some fancy pants, movie studio, and Rick said, "So what's your mission?" Because before we started, and the person said, "Well, we're really dedicated to making important cinema. So we really want to make important films." And Rick went, wow. You probably don't want to hear our idea then, because I definitely don't want to make anything important. I kind of hate anything that smells important, because it's a movie. And it's part of his charm, because he'll work 12 years on a movie, and he'll obsess on it. And he doesn't have these grandiose ideas that he's saving children.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of working 12 years on a movie, I did want to talk to you about Boyhood. So can you walk us through how you were pitched Boyhood and the idea that you were going to make the same movie for such a long period of time?
He's very good. These are great questions. Yeah.
Well, you make it very easy.
That's an awesome question, because my son was just born, and he came to visit Levon and meet the baby, as friends do. And I remember this was Super Bowl weekend, and the Super Bowl was on in the background. We were at some dive bar in New York City, and he was talking about that he really wants to make a coming-of-age film. But there's a lie involved in every coming-of-age film, and it's the idea that we come of age at one moment. When I lost my virginity, when I graduated high school, when my mom was mean to me, like even 400 Blows, he was talking about, as great a film as it is, none of us, didn't come of age at 14. There was so much, there are a series of moments that accumulate into a life. And he was like, I want to make a short film every year for 12 years. And there's only 12 years in American life where we're all on the same grid, where even if you drop out of high school, you're supposed to be in high school. So you're off the grid. Your whole life is in relationship to this grid. You get all of our first memories happen around first grade. They spin around 6, and most of us graduate around 18. He's like, I want to take these 12 years, and instead of a plot, we're going to have this graph. It's like a geometry thing. It's just going to be, where we're going, because he's going to grow up. And so you're kind of watching. The main character would be time, and the space in between the scenes we choose to show. And that negative space would have immense power. Now, what's funny about it is we got so high on this idea, because I was thinking, wow. I said, God, imagine if we made a movie from 68 to 80, how the world changed, the way that our dress changed, the way rock and roll changed, the way cars changed. Like when you look at a car from 1968 to 1980, it's going to be a whole new world. What we didn't imagine was the invention of the iPhone, which somehow stalled everything else out. I mean, the wardrobes don't change in the movies. The cars don't change. The music doesn't change much. The only thing that changes is everybody's looking for a charger. And that's big and significant. But it's funny that 2002, when Levon was born, to when it came out 13 years later, the look of the movie is interesting, because it didn't change nearly as much as we thought it would. But there obviously, the internet happened.
Was there a completed script for Boyhood, or was that?
Oh,
no,
God,
there wasn't.
no.
There definitely wasn't. So talk to us a little bit about how that. So you say yes. He pitches this to you, and you say yes. Does your agent know this?
They have no idea.
No one knows.
Yeah.
Was this completely in secret? So no one, because it was a secret for most of us when we found out it was at Sundance that year. It was a huge surprise.
Yeah, that was one of the best screenings. It was the untitled Richard Linklater film.
I was there that night.
Yeah, that was a great night.
It was incredible. It was like, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. But we were like, oh, there was a movie that was made for 12 years and no one knew about it. So how did you keep it a secret?
Well, no one cared. That's what I mean. It was lost on us that, it was the glory days because nobody gave a shit. We pitched it to everybody in Hollywood, and they all said no. I did it with them, and we would go in, and it's a really great question. They said, so, wait, this movie's not going to come out for 13 years? And we said, yeah, we have to be patient. And they would say, but I'm going to be fired in 13 years. They're like, why would I invest in this movie? And by the way, it's illegal. You can't sign a contract for more than 7 years, And Rick's like, we won't have contracts. It'll be a handshake deal. You're going to hire a kid at 6 years old on a handshake that he's going to want to finish the movie at 18. And Rick's like, yeah. I mean, we'll pick a cool kid, And so we did it, but we had the ideas were so simple. It was going to be like jazz, and we'd build it around the kids and whatever was happening to them. Like, for example, Rick called me up once, and he's like, "Oh man, I went to a Harry Potter book signing the other night." He's like, "I think this might be the last time in the history of literature that a book coming out is going to be such an event like this." He's like, "Because it hasn't happened in a while. I mean, people are waiting in line overnight for a novel to come out. This is big. Let's get the kids and do a book signing." He would have these kind of ideas. And sometimes my wife is here and she would remember this, is that I would call him up like, "Dude, when are we doing this? A year's about to go by." "Oh shit, yeah, you're right." "Well, what do you think, man? What should we do?" And I say that teasing him because he has a million ideas. But he's very, he moves with the river. It's the Tao of Rick, and it's very powerful. But it was super fun. I'll remember it for as long as I have a memory. For years, I would go to bed. I had this amazing dog during the course of Boyhood, this dog Nina, and I would walk her before bed, and Rick's a night owl, and I would call him up. Like, "Well, so what do you think?" And we would talk about parenting and our own childhoods. I was doing a portrait of a father, and a lot of these conversations emerged as the events. I would tell him about a birthday present I made for Maya, which was the Beatles' Black Album, I was using putting the Beatles back together for a metaphor of that just because people break up doesn't mean the music they made together isn't beautiful. She was 13 and going, it's hard to be raised in a divorced home, and everything. And so I was like, and Rick was like, "This is great. Can we put that in the movie?" I was like, "Sure." And so we were like, "Put that in the movie." And that's kind of how the movie happened.
Did he show you any of Boyhood as he was making it, or did you have to wait 12 years to see what you were doing?
Yeah, I am one of the only handful of people that he showed me the first cut at 5 years, and then I'd watch the whole thing get made like a quilt. And for the young editors or anybody who's interested in editing out there, it's an amazing lesson that he learned on that, which is that part of the reason why I think that movie functions as well as it does is each year, he would work on the first half hour again. And then, so a lot of that movie was worked on the way you might work on a novel, He just would re-edit it, and he would figure out the right 30 seconds to cut out and put this shot back in. And filmmakers, Peter Weir used to complain about this all the time, that making a movie, he wished it was like painting, and that he could just finish it when he was really done, as opposed to being, "You have 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days to make something beautiful." And the clock starts ticking, and Boyhood wasn't like that. And I think Rick learned a lot about editing and patience through that.
Were you, when he would come to you with other ideas during that period, were you like, let's keep working together? Or was it more like, well, we have Boyhood and we don't know if that's ever going to come out? So what was that? How would you characterize that period
Well,
of
we
your
made Before
collaboration?
Sunset and Before Midnight while we were
During that
making
period,
Boyhood.
right.
So we were just, for about 10, 12 years, we were always working together. Always.
Did you know it was going to be, when did you know it was going to be a trilogy? The Before movies?
Never. We made the first Before Sunrise, and about 5 years later, Julie and I have a cameo in one of Rick's movies, Waking Life. And
Who's seen Waking Life?
all
Really
right, that's more than I thought. It's a trippy movie about dreams, and it's kind of like Rick's dream. Imagine in his dream world, Jesse and Celine appear because they're important characters in his brain. And so Rick and Julie and I sat down together and we wrote this scene together for the movie. And he told us about the themes of the movie and we came up with this scene. And we just have so much fun writing together that we were like, let's make another, let's continue. Before Sunset is what's the way to phrase this? Or Before Sunrise is the lowest grossing film of all time to spawn a sequel, right? I mean,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, nobody was asking for a sequel to that movie. But we were like, we love these characters, let's make it. 9 years later, you're gonna meet these characters about a movie no one saw? Like, are you nuts? I remember one of my friends saw the poster and he said to me, he was like, wow, you guys believe in yourselves, don't you? And, but after the time of Waking Life, we're like, this is so much fun, let's do it. But we didn't know what to do. And I had written a novel, and Rick came to the book signing. It was in Austin, and I was signing books and stuff. Yeah. And I was signing books, and Rick picked me up. He was in his truck outside the bookstore, and I came out, and he said, oh, man. I'm like, what? He goes, I know what the next movie is. He's like, what? Jessie wrote a book about Before Sunrise, and she shows up at the book signing. I'm like, let's call Julie. And we called Julie. She's like, it's very good, but it has to happen in real time. No cuts. Okay, cool. And then we just got on a riff and started doing it. And then it started bugging me that I really wanted to do Before Midnight because we'd made these two films that are ultimately, I love them, but they're ultimately about romantic projection. They're about the fantasy of romantic love without any of the blood, sweat, and tears that go into love and action. And I thought it would be an amazing thing to have a response to those films. Like, what if we could make a movie? This was the challenge that I put to the two of them that they loved, and we all built it together. But was like, could we make a movie about Jesse and Celine, who've been together for 10 years, raised 2 kids, and have no lies in it? Not tell one lie about romantic love. And like, could we do that? And that became that writing exercise. That was extremely difficult.
That's really incredible. And so you really are done, right? There's not going to be a 4th movie, even though I know that's a question you get asked a lot.
My personal belief is that is a trilogy. There's something, the first movie starts with us at like 23 listening to a couple in their 40s fighting on a train. And by the end of the third film, we are that couple. And so I feel like that has its own, we weren't aware of it, but our subconscious was talking to us. And I think I could imagine us doing an after series, like something else that would deal with Jesse and Celine, but I think it would be its own entity.
But it would still be them. But in a
it would have to be them, yeah.
Like in a.
But we're gonna
in a multiverse. Is like Spider-Man. Like they're in a different.
No. I just mean it would have to be different in some way. Those things are all. You can watch those 3 of a piece. They're
rhythmically. It's like a different musical piece.
It would need to be in a different key. Something about it would have to be wildly different.
I wanted to, we've been talking about Linklater, and we could talk about Linklater for this entire conversation because you guys have made such great art together. But I did want to ask you, going back to the 90s and the Sundance period of your career and making all these incredible indie movies, was there a lot of pressure on you to veer away from that? Were people in your inner circle asking you to do more studio films, more conventional films, and how did you stay true to your vision as an artist during that period? How did you maintain the work that you wanted to maintain when maybe the paychecks would have been much larger if you had done something a little more commercial?
It just depends on what your orientation is and who you're. I mean, this is friendship is so important. Who's talking to you? Who are you trying to impress? You know, are you trying to impress people that you admire? Or are you trying to impress a fictitious universe? You know, and I've been blessed my whole life with really amazing friends that I admire their minds and their intellect. And I want my friends to be proud of my work. And I don't want to be famous for something I'm not proud of. I don't mind signing pictures and things like that for when the poster of the movie makes me really happy, and I'm glad I put it into the world. You know, that feels really good. And if you prioritize, some people authentically love commercial success. That's what they freaking love. You know, like some people like to sing a pop song, you know, but I think if you're singing a pop song and you don't like them, it's a lie to it, and it smells like a lie. My mother always makes fun of me. She's like, every time you sell out, the movie bombs. Don't you think God is trying to tell you something? Follow your heart. And it's true.
It's good advice. Another turning point in your career did come with commercial success with Training Day. Yeah. You and Denzel Washington, you were nominated for your first Oscar. Take us back to that period and what was it like getting that offer and working with Antoine Fuqua and Denzel and making that piece together? Because even though it is a very commercial film, it is something that has a very artistic identity.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I call that movie Threading the Needle. Like, and why I admire Denzel so much is it's so hard to make something artistically viable and that can stand the test of time in a commercial environment. And his power and authority and discipline and the excellence of his imagination is so strong that he can do it. I mean, if anybody saw that movie Flight, where he plays if it wasn't him in that movie, that's like a little Sundance movie. But because it's him, it plays in the malls across America. It's an incredible performance. And he does this over and over again. And I really wanted to work with him when I read that. I mean, I screen tested for that movie a couple different times. I really wanted that part.
You were screen testing with Denzel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was scary. Yeah.
Take us there. What was that like?
Well, I didn't know this then, but, well, luckily for me, his wife was a big fan, and she got him to watch Hamlet. I had done this film of Hamlet, and Denzel got it into his head that he wanted me to do it, and the studio wanted other people, and so I came into the screen test, and he just didn't say one scripted line in the screen test. He was just improvising with me. And it was really difficult to try to keep up with him, you know? And I tried. And because of I had just done this other film I keep talking about Rick, but I just done this movie Tape with Rick, which was a real breakthrough for me as far as my confidence. And I just was telling myself in my head, well, why don't you just pretend Rick's in the room? Like, I'll try not to be intimidated. And I just made up lines like I would with Rick. And I remember getting in the car and thinking about calling my agent to go to hell for putting me in that situation because I felt like I just failed so badly. But then I got the part, and I was really happy, and I didn't curse anybody out. But what Denzel was doing was trying to show other people that he wanted somebody who could play with him, that he didn't want, that he knew that whoever was cast in this part, he was going to have, we're together through the 92% of the whole movie. And so, I don't know, there's a few experiences in my life that are like tent poles, you know, Dead Poet Society being one, you know, Before Sunrise being another. And then Training Day was I felt like I was an adult actor.
And what is Denzel like once you have the role? What is he like as an actor? Does he stay in character? What was that like, the experience of making that film with him?
It's like, it's like playing music with John Lennon. I mean, it's like, is it fun? Who cares? It's amazing. And like what I said about Peter, about not seeing excellence, like when you get to rehearse and really like, I imagine what it's like for an athlete, if you're playing with like a great athlete and you just even watching how they prepare. What's their workout regime? When do they have a protein shake? When don't they? You know, how does he learn his lines? You know, and once you see all that and you see how he creates a performance, it was like being led into another room. It's like, there's the kids' room over here and the grown-ups are in this room. And Denzel's in the grown-up room. Watching the way he handles notes from the studio, you know? Watching the way he leads a set, you know? Those are really the power of, there's several actors I've worked with. Laurie Metcalf is one, Sally Hawkins is another. The power of their imagination is so strong. Like you look in their eyes and you see the world. You don't see a camera, you don't see a costume. It's like you are a cop in LA and it's really, it's real for them and it's contagious. And the imagination, I always say this, that, you know, that making a film is a collective imagination. It's everybody's imagination. How much can we fill this balloon? How much air can go in here? Because we gain strength through the collaboration and through the multiple points of view. And when one person's imagination is really strong, it helps the next person and the next person and the next person.
Did the studio know how great the movie was, or were they actually giving you notes because they weren't sure maybe the ending isn't as conventional? Or was
they're never sure. In fact, I had some strong opinions about a scene that they did not take my notes, for example. And the head of the studio called me up when the movie did really well that weekend. He said, if I'd listened to you, we would have gotten a good review in the New Yorker and the film would have bombed. I'm so glad I didn't listen to you. I was like, all right. But it takes all kinds, you know? I mean, in a way, in that situation, he was actually right. You live and you learn.
You mentioned Sidney Lumet being one of your heroes growing up, and I want to talk to you about working together on Before the Devil Knows You're Dead with Philip Seymour Hoffman. Who's seen that movie? I remember seeing that when it first came out. You and Phil were very good friends, right? And then Sidney came to see, I think you were in Off-Broadway in Hurly Burly, and that's sort of how that came together.
Phil brought Sidney to Hurly Burly. It was one of the best nights of my life. It was the closing. We were in a little theater, and we were moving to a bigger theater, and it was the last night in the smaller house, and Phil and Sidney were there, and it was a really fun night. And afterwards, Sidney was like, I got a script I'm going to send you. And Phil's like, read it, dude, read it. And to Phil's great credit, one of the things I love about him is that this is right after, days after he won the Academy Award. A lot of people have success and they try to parlay it into more money or being fabulous or some contract or something. And Phil called up Sidney. This is a movie they've been trying to get made for a few years. And he called up Sidney right after he won the Oscar. He's like, let's make this movie now. Now we can get it done. And he used all his grease that he had to help an 83-year-old maestro get his final film made. And he didn't have to do that. We weren't paid anything to make that movie. And he's bringing Sidney Lumet to see me in a play. And he's putting the whole thing together. And it was a great experience.
I don't even know where to go from there. I mean, that's such a beautiful image. What was it like? So when you know that Sidney wants you in a movie and you're going to work with Phil, it is what you said earlier. You're making art for your friends.
Yeah, it sounds really great and everything, but I'll make it real for you. We're rehearsing. We do the first read through the script, and I was smoking back then, and we went out. Phil and I went out to have a cigarette outside, and I was like, the end of this movie sucks. Like the script just. Like it falls off a cliff, and Phil's like, we got to say something. How should we say this? Should we say this? And all right, let's do it. And we go in, and I'm like, I look at Phil, and Phil's like, and I go, hey, Sidney, I want to talk to you about the end of the movie. Yeah? What do you think? I said, well, it really doesn't work for me. I really, and Sidney goes, it's interesting. I've made 67 feature films, and I've never made one without you. But they all seem to do all right, don't they? But I guess you think it's really great that you're here and you're going to save me from myself. Like, well, and I'm looking at Phil, and Phil's like, I'm like, no, because I've only had a problem with 3 actors in my whole life. Do you think it's going to be 4? And I was like, I really don't. I don't think so. I'm just saying, what you're saying is you're worried the ending isn't going to work. I hear loud and clear. Do you think I'm a moron? Do you think if the film doesn't work, I will leave that ending on there? Well, probably not. So why don't you let me direct it, and why don't you play the part, okay? Now, how do you propose to make the scene better? All right, well, how to make it better? Okay, good question. And we moved on. But anyway, that was what it was like working with Sidney. And the punchline to that story is that when we wrapped, I'd had a problem the whole movie, which was that I would come into set and Sidney would say to me, watched dailies last night. Phil's incredible. We're in every scene together, you know, and I mean, he's just amazing. I mean, not since I worked with Brando have I seen that commitment, that level of I mean, it must be an honor for you working with him. And you have to understand, I knew Phil like when he was the reader at auditions and stuff. Like, I mean, I was like talking to him when he was come out of acting class, and now it's like an honor. So I go, when we wrap the movie, I go to Phil and I say, listen, man, this has been great, but I gotta tell you, I'm so fucking glad this movie is over. If I have to hear one more time, you know, not since Marlon Brando. And Phil goes, he says that to you? He does that to me every day. He compares you to Fugitive Kind and Marlon Brando. And I'm like, what? And we go over to Sidney. I'm like, Sidney, you're working us up with this Fugitive Kind story. And he goes, you two are so easy to play. Oh my God, couple of punks.
That's really incredible. I have to ask, so what happened to the ending? Were you guys right, or was he right, or did you work on it?
He got the ending.
He got the ending. So you were wrong, it worked. I think the theme is Ethan's notes may not be working.
Yeah, well, they worked on this. They didn't work on Training Day, but they did work on Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. But, by the way, they worked on Training Day, too, just so you know.
I want to talk to you about, you've also obviously been doing television. What was the turning point for you when you realized that television as a medium had really caught up to film or could expand the way in which stories are told, or the sort of the vision of a showrunner was now on par with a great director?
Escape from Dannemora. But I was in Ben Stiller's first movie. And
Reality Bites?
Reality Bites, yeah. Yep, now is the winter of our discontent. But yeah, I know Ben a little bit, and he is brilliant, but that was incredible filmmaking. And I felt like, wow, that's like, I'm watching, Ben is becoming like the Mike Nichols of my generation. I mean, he's funny, and he's smart, and he's brilliant, and he's political, and he's human, and he's the acting in his films is incredible. And so the rules were changing. That and Game of Thrones was changing everything. Game of Thrones is one of the best things I ever saw in my life, and it's on television. And then my wife and I have this production company, and we had both read The Good Lord Bird, and it was a James McBride novel that I just thought was brilliant, and she thought it was brilliant. I was like, we got to try to make this into a movie. She said to me, you're so dumb. We got to make it into a limited series. And I'm like, right. That's what we have to do. Because then we wouldn't have to cut the book. We could use the same architecture of the novel and actually tell the complete story. And that was my first real experience with television. And then I saw Reservation Dogs, and I felt like, when I watched that, I felt like, all right, if the French New Wave was happening now, like talk about being nostalgic for the previous era. I was like, wait a second. Great young filmmakers would be working in TV right now. That's where they would be. And Sterling Harjo is brilliant. And this is real filmmaking. I hadn't seen anything exactly like that. It was new. Like the way I felt when I saw Slacker. I just was like, wow, this is voice. This is a new voice has entered the landscape. And so I don't care if you're on TV or make a movie or whatever. I mean, hell, the budgets for the episode of The Lowdown is twice the budget of Blue Moon. When I was a kid, movies had budgets. We had great prop masters. We had great costume designers. TV, people would work on TV to get a job in film. Now you do independent film to get a job on a show. It's like, so you kind of have to erase what you learned. But Sidney always said that. Sidney would always talk about how when he started, live television was the high point of the artistic medium. And then live television became passé, and television came, and then cinema became the reigning art form. And he was like, and right when he died, it was changing. And he was saying, see, all this stuff is always changing, and it's going to keep changing.
How has producing helped position you in the business in a different way? How does that help your artistry?
Well, it helps you create the jobs that you dream of getting offered. Actors, we're only as good as our opportunities. And if you don't have a great opportunity, you're not going to excel. And there's a great pull to mediocrity. It's like a tidal pull. Everything wants everything to be homogenous. They want it to be the same. Everybody's worried they're going to lose money. Everybody's worried they're going to get fired. Everybody's worried they're going to make an ass out of themselves. And it's so, I'm teasing Rick about his laissez-faire attitude, but you have to be so strong to penetrate the tide of mediocrity. It's very difficult. Well, the fact that Denzel has done that in the mainstream Hollywood is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But most of us can't do that. But you can do little things like develop your own material and work on projects and try to fan, every time there's a spark of a good idea, how can we fan flames of that and turn that into a finished film that people can see?
I have one more question for you, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. Okay, we've covered a lot. I know we've talked about a lot of different directors you've worked with. And so what was it like working with a director by the name of Taylor Swift on her Fortnite music video?
That woman is incredible. Sometimes you meet people like I've thrown out some names and stuff, but you meet her and you're like, oh, I know why you're famous. You're amazing. Like, you are not the average bear. She's a force of nature. And, it's easy to make fun and it's easy to be armchair critical and stuff. It's hard to do anything. And as soon as you do something, you're not doing 15 other things. And what she is doing with her life, I'll tell you a funny story about her, which is that my oldest daughter, was like 13 or I don't know, she might have been younger than that. Okay. Anyway, I love Chris Christopherson, and I was writing a profile on the great songwriter Chris Christopherson for Rolling Stone magazine, and he came to the house. Now, you guys may know him, you may not, but I'm a huge geek fan of Chris Christopherson. I think he's amazing. I think he's brilliant. And he comes into our house, and my oldest daughter's running around with a Taylor Swift t-shirt on. And I'm like, and I said, Chris, sorry, I'm trying to teach her real musical taste. And Chris says to me, mark my words, that kid stays out of rehab, she's gonna be the greatest American songwriter yet. And I was like, really? You really think so? You know how hard it is to write a good song? She's 16, 17 years old, and she's got 10 of them. She's gonna be incredible. And I thought, wow, you're right, actually. And so it's been breathtaking to watch that he could see that in her. He could tell. He knew it wasn't a fad because the songwriting is so good. And to watch her empower herself to direct these videos and take it all on the chin and be willing to stand out front, it is not easy. And I was really inspired going to see her concert because
The Eras Tour?
it was incredible. I mean, not only is she changing the economy of the world, she has people coming together, like in a room here we are tonight, getting out of our houses, being together, dancing, caring about poetry, caring about ideas, caring about expression. And there's, thousands of people there rocking out. And I was like, again, I was like, oh, someday people are going to write books about this moment. I remember my mom, she saw the Beatles, right? And I was like, what was it like? She's like, oh, it's so embarrassing. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, all the girls are making fools of themselves. And I knew John and Paul were never going to take me seriously surrounded by these morons. And I thought, that's the greatest example of what it's like to be in a moment. You're not thinking about, I'm seeing the Beatles live in Fort Worth, Texas. That's an incredible moment. And she's thinking about, who are these idiots? So anyway.
How did you get offered a role in her music video? Does she reach out to you, or does someone else reach out to you? Do you remember?
My daughter is creating opportunities in my life. I get a text from my daughter. Hey, Dad, Taylor Swift wants your number. Cool? Yeah, that's cool. So I guess they met, and anyway, Taylor Swift is a Dead Poets Society fan, and so hell, I'll take what I can get.
There we go, and we've come full circle. Really, really incredible. This is really one of the best conversations I've ever had. So why don't you guys now, let's keep it going. We're going to take questions, come up to the mic, and ask Ethan a question that you'd like to ask him. Let's make a single file line, please.
This is really exciting. All of a sudden, now I feel like I'm on a game show. Like the next contestant, for $500.
We can go ahead start.
Hi, Ethan. Welcome to Miami, first off.
Oh, thank you.
Having done a lot of theater yourself, my fiance and I actually saw you in True West on Broadway,
Oh, wow.
which is incredible. Is there anything that you've learned doing theater that you carry over into film and vice versa?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think part of what I love, why I speak in such hyperbolic terms about Denzel, is that there's a great tradition in England of treating acting like a craft that can be learned. There's a great, I call it the American talent myth, that you're either talented or untalented. It's not really true. We all have a certain access to parts of ourselves that are easy, and with the right teaching and the right work, you can access it and expand it. And the theater is really expansive for the actor. And Denzel's one of our few movie stars who is a great stage actor as well. Like in England, there's lots of them, but we don't have that many. And it's like, I couldn't do Blue Moon. I probably couldn't do any of the work I've done with Linklater without my experience in theater. And I don't think Rick would have cast me in Blue Moon had he not seen my theater work. And it's just a lot more difficult. In cinema, there's so many people there to help you. They frame, if you can't stop twitching your foot, they frame it out. If you're boring and you can't pick up the cues, the editor goes to work on that scene. They've got a lighting designer who's like getting the, light to touch your nose in just the most pretty way. All the stuff designed, and then if it's still not good, they crank up the music, and you can't, that's just not there on stage. It is the actor's responsibility. You have to pace the show. You mentioned Hurly Burly, but I remember it was a really long play. But it's this thing that you learn. That play was very long. And if we came in under 3:15, we got a standing ovation. If we came in at 3:18, we didn't. It was a math to it. And I know this from editing movies. There's a math to each, and it's different for each show. Every story has a different pace and an energy. But when you find the right pace, boom, it happens. And when you act on stage, you learn about pace. Thanks.
Hello. I just wanted to say I've been following your filmography since mid-90s, and to put that in perspective, I was born in 87. And you said in an interview once that you wanted to make a movie in every genre. And do you feel like you've accomplished that with your whole filmography? And also, is there any genre in particular that you prefer working than others, or no?
Yeah, I said that when I was younger. I thought it was really funny to talk about my obituary, and now I don't find it as humorous. And I used to say that in my obituary, I want one great film in every genre. But that was from years of walking around Blockbuster Video, the drama, comedy, action, and I'm like, I want one on every shelf. The Lowdown is my first kind of what I would call a true comedy. And I would love to do a bald-faced comedy. I have a secret hope of someday getting to do a silent film. I want Ben Stiller to direct me in a silent film, and I'll pull out my inner Buster Keaton. I've said this to him. He hasn't bitten. He's not interested. I'm sure he would act in it himself. But no, I've always loved working in different genres because I think when I was younger, particularly, I was worried I couldn't shape change like Phil could or like some of the actors I really admire. They were really able to change. They were shamanistic in their ability to alter their being. And I didn't think I could do that, but I could. And I also love all kinds of movies, I would love to be in a great fantasy piece, like Lord of the Rings or something like that. I would love to do that. I got to do a little of that in The Northman, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. What was your favorite movie that you've done? And also, what's your favorite movie that you were not in, like your all-time favorite movie?
Favorite movie that I'm not in is a long list, but the two that jumped in my head is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love it. And also, if you guys haven't seen Reds, Diane Keaton just passed, and it's one of the great films of all time, and worth doing. The personal favorite is so hard because it kind of depends. It depends on who I'm talking to. If whatever your favorite is my favorite. I love. Good Lord Bird holds. I made that with my wife. We became great friends with James McBride. It was a way to utilize. It was a really great intersection of a political work that is also personal and emotional and funny, and so I really and Boyhood, Training Day, Dead Poets Society. I don't know. Thank you.
Hi. This
Hi.
has been such a delight. We've loved having you. I would like to cordially invite you to the Miami Book Fair that we have every year because I think you would absolutely love it.
Awesome. I love book fairs.
I am a huge fan of your work, and I rewatch Poets and Sunrise every Christmas. They're my favorite Christmas movies. But there's another, arguably, but there's another piece that you've done that has really embedded itself into the psyche of my life, which is a video you did about 5 years ago for TED, and you were talking about the importance of creativity and art. And that really spoke to me because you spoke about playing the fool, and I now live my life with that mindset every day. But mostly you talk about it in a sense as it's almost a religion to believe in the sustenance of art and the sustenance of creativity. Can you talk a little bit about how that faith in art shapes your life and why it's so vital to you?
I can. When I was in my early 20s, I really was very interested in exploring a relationship to what I would call the divine, right? It was really, really interesting to me, and I would read everything, and I really thought that I was going to get somewhere with that. Why are we born? Why do we have to die? Why are we here? What is the point? Why are we in a star in space? What is time? what is the divine nature of time. All those things in my early 20s, I couldn't stop thinking about them. And then all of a sudden, I turned 50. And I was so depressed. The pandemic was happening. And we were trying to figure out what to do with my 50th birthday because it was like right in the heart of the pandemic. And I just felt so sad that I hadn't done anything with those questions, that I had never got beyond first base with any of those questions. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be dead in 5 minutes. And I never took anywhere. And with talking to my family, I realized that my expression of my faith was in my life as an actor. And that as soon as we start sitting around telling stories and saying, all right, imagine this. There's a young girl, she's 14, she's wearing red shoes, and she has a blue hat, and her mother is very angry at her. And she's trying to buy her mother a birthday present, but she knows her mother's. As soon as I start telling you a story, the subtext of that is that our lives matter. You know, as soon as I step on stage, you're looking at a person and you're seeing, why should I not lie? When we watch people act out stories and you see the liar, you hate them. You don't want to be that character. When you see honor, when you see a mother love their child, it feels good. It's not an intellectual process. It's a faith-based process in that there's this idea. We live in a world right now where there's so much doubt and there's so much scary things happening. And I like to think about this is that faith is not the lack of doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty. You know, that I know this and I know that. She's wrong, he's wrong, I'm right. You know, faith is bigger than that, and faith holds mystery. And good art holds mystery. And it leaves space for mystery. And because truth is multidimensional. It isn't like the truth. There is a truth. But the truth of this evening is different for every one of us and all the circumstances of our life that led us here. And they're all true. And that doesn't mean that they're alternate facts. There are not. There are facts. And if we don't work with, you know, what's that, sunlight is the best disinfectant? Part of the idea of good movies and songs and dance is it's sunlight. And it disinfects the lies. And then when we have some truth, we have common ground we can walk on. Honor, dignity, integrity. I value these. These are important to me. Are they important to you? You know, and that's what I think the job of making movies are, or being a human being.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Thank you.
We have time for one last question.
Last one. You better be good,
God.
dude. Better be good.
Anyone else got a better one behind me? With Blue Moon, there's a line, I think it goes, that's the thing about art, it waits for you. And we see Lorenz kind of reckon that with his own work at the end of the film. And so I was curious if there's, you know, something in your 100 films on IMDb or in one of your novels and your plays that, like, now later in life you look back on that piece and you've gleaned some new insight or you've learned something new.
Well, first off, thanks for saying that. It's my favorite line in the movie.
Oh, I adore that line, and I thought about it so much that as I was coming up, I was like, did I make it up? Like, am I obsessing over a fake thing?
No. It's my favorite line in it. You know, I've given a piece of music to this young woman, you know, because I want her to like me, but she hasn't even gotten around to it. And my character says, that's okay, it's okay. It's the great thing about art. It waits for you. And that's what I love. Any movies we've talked about tonight that you haven't seen, guess what? Good news. You get to see it. It's there waiting for you. And it's going to be amazing. And so I'm so future-centric. You know, no sooner do you get something like a prize like this or something that it crosses your mind. It's like, so? Is this a high water mark? Is that what it is? Am I arrived here? You know, it's good enough. It's cool. I'm happy, you know? But you're like, what's next? Can I do something? I like doing this. Can I do it again, please? Put me in one more game, coach. You know, so I don't spend a lot of time thinking about, I love it when anything that I've worked on, somebody finds it and it's years later, that has huge meaning to me, that it withstood. Time is the great curator, right? And so that's very meaningful. But you started this whole thing with saying that I'd done 100 movies, which may or may not be true. IMDb is not true. But it reminds me of something that I'll leave you on this note, because I think it's funny, but I don't know how it's going to come across. But we'll keep it between us, because it might sound really cocky. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to come off. But when you said that, I thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. When I was a kid, there was a great William Holden line where some young person was asking him for advice about acting. He said, look, kid, do every picture you can. 1 in 10 will be good, and 1 in 100 will get you an Academy Award. I thought, all right, if I hit 100, this has been so fun. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you guys so much for joining us.
You made this so easy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, guys.